You wake up in a small, unfamiliar room. The sun filters through the blinds. There is a note taped to your forehead that says, "Do not panic. Read the mirror." You stumble toward the bathroom, heart pounding. Written across the mirror in thick red ink are the words, "You have amnesia. You lose all memory every 24 hours. This is your life now." Your hands shake as you scan the room. There are instructions on the walls, labels on every item, photos with your name written beneath each face, but none of them mean anything. They are echoes of a life you can no longer remember. And this is not just your reality. This is everyone's. The year is 2039, a neurological event, still not fully understood, swept across the globe with no warning. Some blame a synthetic virus designed for warfare. Others believe it was the side effect of a failed global cognitive enhancement project gone wrong. A few whisper about solar flares altering brain chemistry, but the truth is irrelevant now, because the result is always the same. No human can retain memory for longer than 24 hours. Every night, as sleep closes the mind, it also wipes it clean. People wake up to unfamiliar homes, strange faces, and broken routines. Hospitals are flooded with the terrified and the confused. The internet becomes a labyrinth of contradicting explanations. Governments scramble, but without consistent leadership or even memory of their own actions. Collapse begins almost immediately. The world is no longer driven by progress or continuity, but by daily survival. In this future, the human species becomes a goldfish in a digital aquarium, swimming in circles, forgetting it has done so before. Civilization, built on the foundation of memory, begins to crumble. Language, law, love, learning, all these rely on remembering what came before. Without memory, you cannot grow. Without memory, you cannot connect. And without memory, you cannot survive. This is not just a hypothetical future. This is the world you are about to step into. A world where every morning your past dies. Every day your life resets. And by the time the sun sets again, you will forget you ever heard this warning. In the next hour, we will guide you through the unraveling of this fragile new world. You will see it, feel it, live it, and understand why you will not survive when memory lasts only a day. Let us begin where it all began, on the morning the world forgot itself. The year was 2039, and at first it seemed like any other year in a rapidly digitized world. Cities pulsed with life, governments debated over climate goals. Neural enhancement implants had just reached commercial availability, and tech giants raced to develop memory-boosting nanobots. People were linking their minds to external memory storage, recording every conversation, and uploading entire days into cloud servers. But then came the black morning. A morning no one would remember, not truly, and that was the problem. Reports began trickling in from neurological clinics in Tokyo and Johannesburg, describing a strange wave of patients who awoke with no recollection of the previous day. Not dementia, not head trauma. These were healthy people, students, engineers, nurses, children, all fully conscious, fully functional, yet blank slates. They knew language, could walk, breathe, eat, but personal memory, identity, routines, everything tied to time and experience, gone. At first, it was treated as an isolated glitch, a few odd cases blamed on stress or biohacking gone wrong. But within 72 hours, the phenomenon had erupted into global chaos. Hospitals overflowed with patients who could not recall how they arrived. Emergency call centers were bombarded with questions from people who found themselves in strange apartments or surrounded by strangers claiming to be family. Every major city began to show signs of systemic disorientation. Social media exploded with shaky videos. A woman in London crying on a sidewalk because she didn't recognize her own child. A man in Sao Paulo live streaming his horror as his wife forgot their entire life together for the third consecutive day. Scientists scrambled to explain it. Was it viral, a neural parasite, an atmospheric contaminant? Theories piled up. A quantum memory inversion, a global EMP frying hippocampal neurons, a rogue AI experiment hijacking sleep cycles. But no single answer satisfied the scope of devastation. Every time someone made progress, they would forget what they discovered the next morning. The World Health Organization declared an event level 0 continuity crisis, but the statement was issued too late. By the time the emergency broadcast reached millions, many had already forgotten how televisions worked. Across Earth, humanity had lost the one tool that built civilization: memory. They stuck notes on walls, scribbled messages on mirrors. But memory loss was total, not just personal, but also temporal. People forgot what year it was, what they were doing 5 minutes ago. Even reading became unreliable. Without context, instructions meant nothing. Notes like "take pills after breakfast" became meaningless if you could not remember eating. Photos of loved ones were just faces. Even with names scrawled underneath, there was no emotion, no recollection, just echoes from a ghost world no one remembered living in. Governments fell apart quickly. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, all of them woke up without any idea of who they were or why they were surrounded by security personnel. National leaders became liabilities, wandering their own halls in a fog of fear. Military protocols failed. Orders couldn't be followed. Missiles sat idle, or worse, were prepped for launch with no recollection of prior decisions. The chain of command snapped in every country simultaneously. Attempts to create 24-hour rotational governments collapsed. Leaders forgot their roles each day. New elections were held daily. Constitutions were rewritten by memoryless mobs who couldn't recall what rights they voted for yesterday. The digital world was no refuge. Passwords and biometric logins failed the amnesiac population. People locked themselves out of bank accounts, communication networks, even their own homes. Eventually, technology became silent. Automated systems crashed or entered error loops when user inputs were abandoned or garbled. Smart homes turned dumb. Cars stopped moving. The global internet slowed to a crawl, then flickered into dormancy, no longer supported by a coherent maintenance workforce. The age of information had collapsed, not because of war or fire, but because no one could remember how to keep it running. The economy went dark within the week. Workers forgot their professions, left factories, or showed up to jobs they no longer held. Pilots sat in cockpits, unsure of how to fly. Air traffic controllers had to relearn their duties each morning using post-it diagrams. With no continuity of skill, every profession degraded to its most basic tasks, then vanished entirely. Food distribution halted. Medicine deliveries failed. Supermarkets emptied. Hunger set in within days. Churches filled briefly with terrified congregants. But even prayer could not hold a mind that erased itself overnight. People forgot the very names of their gods. Rituals broke down. Sacred texts became unfamiliar. Spiritual leaders, no longer able to guide, became wandering amnesiacs themselves. The great metaphysical comfort of belief was replaced by a world of incomprehensible fear. In the scientific community, a term was coined for the phenomenon before all order vanished: Global Episodic Amnesia Syndrome, or GEAS, a haunting name, especially when said aloud, as if Earth had fallen under a curse. A single brutal rule: no new memory past 24 hours. People retained their motor skills, reflexes, instincts. They could walk, talk, even smile at strangers. But every night, like clockwork, their memories reset. And worse, it seemed to be spreading backward in time. Many woke up with even less memory than the day before. First, it was 24 hours, then 20, then 16. It fluctuated erratically in early cases. Some lost memory after 12 hours. A few deteriorated within minutes. Sleep became feared. Dreams became dangerous. As the days passed, rituals began to take shape. Some communities created memory sanctuaries, temples of instruction painted with daily schedules on every surface. Others went primal. Tattoos became mnemonic tools. People inked their arms with names, warnings, and purpose. Some carved important facts into their walls or their own skin. It was barbaric, but in a world where your own reflection became unfamiliar each day, even pain was preferable to being lost. But nothing could bring back the past. Humanity had crossed a threshold, a silent apocalypse, unmarked by fire or blood, but by the simple absence of memory. A global forgetting, a mass cognitive death. And now, as the sky above remains unchanged and the cities still stand, there are no longer societies, only surviving individuals. And you, time traveler, have just landed in the middle of it. You open your eyes and find a note on your chest. It reads, "Welcome back. Read everything. You've done this before, but you don't remember any of it. This is what life has become. And now you must face the horror of waking up with no past again and again." The room is unfamiliar. The ceiling is off-white, stained with faint patches of humidity. You lie on a thin mattress with no sheets. The fluorescent light buzzes gently overhead. There is a smell, sterile, synthetic, like medical alcohol and dust. For a moment, everything feels still. Your body moves, but your mind resists. Something is wrong. You do not know this place. You do not know who you are. Your chest tightens. Panic swells. You sit up and swing your legs to the floor, where your toes land on cold tile. Then you see it, scrawled across the wall in large black letters. "Do not freak out. Read the note." Your fingers tremble as you find a folded piece of paper taped to the foot of the bed. You unfold it slowly. The handwriting is your own. You will not remember yesterday. You have a condition. Your memory resets every morning. Do not trust your instincts. Follow the checklist on the mirror. You prepared this. Your heart races. You stumble toward the mirror. It is smeared with writing in marker and labeled sticky notes. Your name is Aiden. You are 31 years old. This is your apartment. You have no wife. You live alone. Do not open the door until you're dressed. The world changed in 2039. You are not crazy. You do not remember writing any of this. You do not even remember your own face. The reflection shows someone exhausted, someone haunted by years of forgetting. Dark circles sag beneath bloodshot eyes. Your hands instinctively reach to touch your own cheek, but even the sensation feels like it belongs to someone else. You rifle through drawers and find a digital recorder. You've lost your memory. The world is like this now. Just breathe. Your routine is mapped out. Read everything before you go outside. Take the pills on the counter, drink water, and avoid strangers. Trust only what's written in your own words. As the recording ends, the silence creeps in again. It's heavy, the kind that presses on your skull, whispering that the entire world has been erased. You begin to move through the space slowly. Each object is labeled: kitchen, water, food. Do not touch the stove. Reheat only. Danger. Even the toothbrush has a sticky note. You like mint. In the next room, a wall-sized flowchart explains your daily process. There are pictures of people, friends, maybe. Notes underneath read: Sophie, sister, lives 2 blocks away. Miles, neighbor, safe. Avoid Officer Bryn. Memory unstable. You once built a life around them. Now you are living in a play directed by your past self. A stage set for a one-man performance you don't remember rehearsing. You see a journal with past entries, one for every day. Some pages are scratched out violently. Some are filled with neat, tight handwriting. The latest entry reads, "Yesterday you almost left the apartment without pants. Stay focused. Stay in the loop." No one remembers. We are all in the same prison now. You begin to dress, following the instructions. The clothes are laid out. You do not know why Tuesday matters. You wonder if it is really Tuesday. Then you stop yourself. That question will spiral. That is what your past self warned about. Time is not real here. Only the next step matters. You swallow the pills, even though you don't know what they are. You pour water into a mug labeled yours. You stare out the window and see other buildings with large notes in windows. Arrows pointing toward exits. Mirrors reflecting handwritten instructions. You spot a man across the street shaving his head while staring at a poster that says, "You always shave on day 1. The world outside is quiet, but not calm. People walk in straight lines, eyes scanning papers, tablets, or painted walls. No one looks up, no one waves. Every movement is mechanical, every gesture memorized, not remembered. This is not living. This is survival choreography, a civilization puppeteered by muscle memory and fear. You glance at a screen on the wall. A video loop plays of yourself reading the same morning instructions you just followed. At the end, you say into the camera, "No matter how scared you are right now, you've done this before. You've survived before. Trust your system. Do not deviate. Curiosity is death." The screen goes black. You sit in silence. Later, you venture outside. You pass murals covered with text, symbols, routines, visual mnemonics. Some walls have calendars counting days with thick paint. Others are entirely blacked out. Graffiti reads, "The mind is a prison." You see people walking with tags around their necks, names, blood types, warnings. One girl has her name tattooed across her forearm in bright red ink. Another wears a jacket that says, "Do not follow me. I do not trust myself." Each step outside your home feels like a risk. You pass a man arguing with a woman. Neither knows why they are yelling. They accuse each other of theft, betrayal, lies, but neither remembers what actually happened. It's rage without roots. Soon they walk away, each muttering apologies to no one in particular. Without memory, conflict is unresolvable. Everyone resets to guilt and fear. You pass a memorial wall with photos and faded names. At the bottom, it reads, For those who forgot to remember themselves, a woman is kneeling, holding a notebook, crying silently. Maybe she is grieving someone. Maybe she is grieving herself. Or maybe, like you, she just woke up and does not know why she feels like something is missing. As you return home, you realize the hours are gone. You followed the instructions. You stayed safe. But the day was empty, mechanical. You did what your notes told you to do, but you don't feel alive. You feel like a machine trying to simulate a person. You wonder if you have done this before, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, and you wonder if tomorrow you will feel the same ache of waking up in a life you cannot remember living. Night falls. You sit at the desk, instructed to record a message for yourself. You stare into the camera. Your lips tremble. "Hey, it's me again," you say. "You won't know me tomorrow, but I'm you, and I'm scared. I don't know how much longer we can do this, but if you're watching this, it means we're still trying, so please keep trying." You save the message. You lie down. You stare at the ceiling. You pray you remember something when you wake up, but deep down, you know what will happen next. Sleep, erase, repeat. The next morning, a new version of you will wake up to the same loop. But now imagine that the entire world is doing this all at once. A planet full of blank minds trying to function. In the next section, we will explore what happens when every system built by memory collapses. Civilization does not collapse in a firestorm. It collapses in silence through the slow erasure of connection, memory, and meaning. The first few days after the event were chaotic but manageable. People tried to adapt. Governments issued emergency protocols. Media broadcast survival tips, and communities organized local support groups. Cities, once choreographed machines of efficiency, devolved into tangled networks of confusion. At first, there were traffic collisions and transit breakdowns. Drivers forgot how to operate vehicles. Train conductors abandoned their posts. Madrid. Planes grounded themselves when pilots failed pre-flight checks or forgot flight paths entirely. Within 2 days, air travel stopped. Highways turned into parking lots, dotted with stalled cars and confused passengers holding maps they no longer knew how to read. Public transportation halted, and with it, the lifeblood of urban mobility. Without workers showing up for maintenance or operation, subways flooded, buses were abandoned, and schedules vanished. Power grids flickered and then failed as electrical engineers, unable to recall maintenance routines or critical safety protocols, made fatal miscalculations. Water treatment plants ran dry, and sewage began backing into streets. Cities that had once hosted millions of people became unlivable in less than a week. In government buildings, the halls were filled with leaders pacing aimlessly, clutching notes that no longer made sense. Bureaucracies, once dependent on thousands of pages of paperwork and decades of institutional knowledge, froze completely. Meetings were forgotten as soon as they ended. Laws were reinterpreted or ignored entirely. Emergency legislation was proposed, passed, and forgotten in a single day. Orders given to law enforcement evaporated with the morning reset. Police officers wandered the streets, unsure of their purpose. Many abandoned their stations, confused by the uniforms they wore and the weapons they carried. The justice system became irrelevant. Judges could not recall prior trials. Lawyers showed up in courtrooms with no case files, unable to argue or remember clients' names. Inmates in prisons were either forgotten or released out of confusion. Courts became mausoleums of failed order. The economy followed quickly. The concept of currency depends on trust, and trust requires continuity. Without memory, value became abstract. People forgot their bank pins, their account balances, their employment status. Salaries were never processed. Supply chains disintegrated, and warehouses sat full of goods with no one to deliver them. No one remembered what they had invested in. Brokers woke up every day to blank screens and unrecognizable spreadsheets. Money, in both digital and physical form, lost its meaning. Bartering rose for a time, food for medicine, clothing for shelter. But even this collapsed as people forgot the value of what they owned. Markets turned violent. Desperation led to looting, but not for luxury, only for survival. People grabbed food they didn't remember eating, tools they didn't know how to use, and medicine with instructions they couldn't understand. Pharmacies were stripped of painkillers and sedatives, not for addiction, but for the illusion of control. Most people didn't even know what they were taking. They just wanted to numb the terror of waking up to nothing. Media attempted to persist. News networks tried broadcasting reminders, pre-recorded loops of information, daily orientation videos. Social media became a graveyard of confused posts, selfies with unreadable captions, and hashtags with no context. Most posts stopped being read altogether. They were written in fear, in ritual, in the vain hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would remember. Religion surged briefly, then collapsed. With every person waking up without memory, faith became untethered. Others declared themselves prophets in a world of endless forgetting. But the power of ritual depends on repetition, and when no one can recall the rituals, belief itself fragments. Within weeks, the great houses of worship were silent. Crosses, crescents, and stars hung forgotten over altars where no one prayed anymore. Families disintegrated. Parents could not recognize their children. Spouses became strangers. Birthdays passed unnoticed. Holidays were erased. Trust eroded, and fear took root. Some attempted to hold households together using journals and shared recordings. But without the emotional continuity of memory, bonds dissolved. Love became mechanical. People stopped saying "I love you" because they no longer understood what it meant. The educational system, too, was destroyed. Children, unable to retain lessons, simply sat in classrooms, staring blankly at the same lesson plans repeated day after day. Teachers broke down. Curriculum was abandoned. Universities shut their doors as knowledge could no longer be passed down. Libraries became ghost towns, filled with books no one could comprehend. Even reading became difficult for many, as short-term memory loss disrupted the ability to process narratives or retain meaning from sentence to sentence. All innovation stopped. There were no new inventions, no new breakthroughs. Even the simplest discovery had to be rediscovered every day. No continuity meant no improvement, no iteration, no progress. Science, once the engine of civilization, became useless in a world where conclusions were forgotten by morning. Laboratories sat quiet. Research papers piled up unread. Whiteboards were wiped clean each night by janitors who forgot they were no longer employed. In the absence of organized society, new groups formed. Survival tribes emerged, built not on memory, but on strict daily routines. Some communities adopted tattoos as permanent reminders, using skin as the only reliable canvas. Others painted buildings in bold diagrams, marking every wall with symbols and rituals to simulate stability. The lucky ones had access to printed instruction manuals, life-saving guides, written by earlier versions of themselves. The unlucky ones wandered, blank-eyed and mute, forgotten even by themselves. The city is still standing, but it is no longer a city. There are no new songs, no new stories, no new ideas, only echoes, only repetition. The world continues spinning, but humanity is stuck in an eternal loop of forgetting. And still, every morning, millions open their eyes, staring into the same fluorescent lights, reading the same desperate notes, walking into the same streets, not knowing that they've done it all before. If the system has collapsed, what happens to the very thing that once defined us as a species, our ability to learn? In the next section, we will descend into the slow extinction of knowledge itself. In a world where memory resets every 24 hours, the pursuit of knowledge is not just difficult, it is impossible. The human brain, once the vessel of progress, becomes a leaky container, spilling out every new piece of information before it can settle. The collapse of education was not immediate. At first, parents tried to bring their children to school, hoping that routine would provide structure. Teachers still showed up, standing before whiteboards filled with yesterday's lessons. But quickly, everyone began to realize the same terrible truth. Nothing was sticking. Children arrived each day with vacant eyes and no recollection of the alphabet, the number system, or even the names of their classmates. Imagine a classroom where no one remembers what a classroom is. Desks are rearranged into strange patterns by students who think they are organizing furniture. A teacher stands at the front, reading from a textbook with no context, not knowing whether the lesson has been delivered 100 times or if it is the first. Chalk scrawls gibberish across blackboards. Questions are asked and answered, but none of it matters, because by the time night falls, the knowledge evaporates. The next morning, it starts again, blank slates and endless confusion. Colleges and universities became ghost campuses. Libraries are filled with footnotes and bookmarks, all left by versions of people who no longer exist. Book spines gather dust. Students leave notes for themselves in margins, but without continuity. The notes read like the ramblings of strangers. Remember this formula. One scribbles. Important for exam, writes another. But what exam? What formula? What subject? The connections fade faster than they can be made. Scientific institutions fought hardest against the tide of forgetting. Laboratories tried to implement continuity through recorders, flowcharts, and endless documentation. Teams of researchers worked around the clock, handing off their findings like runners in a marathon. But every handoff became a loss. Every team reset. Some tried brain implants that would beam daily updates into their minds, but the brain rejected these after a day as well. Others attempted collective logs, massive databases of shared knowledge. But no one remembered how to access them, how to trust them, or whether the data within had been tampered with. Paranoia took root. People began doubting even the most basic scientific truths. Was gravity always this strong? Do we breathe oxygen or carbon dioxide? How many planets are in the solar system? What is cancer? These questions, once answered and taught through generations, now linger in the air, unanswered, because no one can hold on to the answers. Knowledge becomes rumor. Fact becomes folklore. Science becomes myth. Language suffers next. Without consistent exposure or reinforcement, vocabulary deteriorates. People forget words, then syntax, then entire grammatical structures. Soon, sentences become broken. Meanings are conveyed through gestures, sketches, or crude sounds. Dictionaries are consulted, but they are alien books filled with definitions that have no anchor. Languages begin to fracture, dialects dissolve, cultural expression vanishes, poetry, storytelling, philosophy, all built upon the memory of meaning, fade into oblivion. In the arts, the collapse is even more visceral. Musicians forget how to play their instruments. Painters stare at blank canvases, unsure where to begin or whether they ever did. Editors become silent. Films, once looping for comfort, are played repeatedly, but the plot is never understood. People cry at scenes they do not remember seeing before. Some become obsessed with certain melodies, convinced they mean something, but the reason why eludes them. The emotional resonance of art weakens until even beauty becomes meaningless. History, too, disappears. Museums remain, at first, as physical monuments to the past, but without memory, they become rooms full of strange objects. Who were the Romans? What was the Cold War? Who invented electricity? What is a Holocaust? These questions are asked by children and adults alike, with no distinction between them. There are no more elders, no more wisdom passed down. Every generation is reborn each day. Every lesson has to be retaught, and no one is capable of teaching. In time, even the calendar becomes irrelevant. Days of the week are guessed-based on arbitrary patterns. Months lose meaning. Years are no longer counted. Holidays vanish. Celebrations become hollow rituals, performed without memory of their origin. Why do we put up a tree in December, a child might ask, and no one can answer? Culture itself, the grand accumulation of ideas and beliefs built over millennia, dissolves. Humanity becomes a species of goldfish, swimming in circles, rediscovering fire every day, never knowing they had it the day before. To compensate, some communities attempt desperate measures. One settlement constructs a temple of the day, a massive building with painted murals and floor-to-ceiling timelines of what happened in the last 24 hours. It is updated hourly by a small team of volunteers who never sleep, never stop recording. But even they begin to slip. A man paints a mural of a conversation he overheard, only to forget who he was painting. Another logs an encounter in vivid detail, then erases it an hour later, convinced it was a hallucination. Eventually, even the temple walls contradict themselves. One panel says a visitor came from the east. Another says west. Neither painter remembers which is true. Efforts to preserve continuity through artificial intelligence also fail. Some societies try using AI companions to feed people their own memories each morning, but the problem persists. No one remembers how to trust the machines. People question whether the AI is accurate. Could it be lying? Could it be hacked? Could it be telling you you're a father when you're actually not? When your only source of truth is an emotionless screen, doubt becomes poison. Most people shut them off. Others destroy them. One community burns its entire server hub out of fear that it is feeding them false memories. The AI simply reported the facts, and no one believed it. Over time, people stop trying to learn. People focus on the tangible: food, shelter, sleep. They follow instructions and obey routines written by strangers who might once have been themselves. They are alive, but only barely. Their minds are empty vessels, filled only for a moment before being poured out again by the setting sun. This is how a species dies, not with screams, not with fire, but with silence. Not because the body fails, but because the mind forgets how to learn. And without knowledge, there is no innovation, no creativity, no future, just the cold repetition of instinct. But knowledge is not the only casualty. In a world where memory lasts only one day, what happens to the people we love? In the next section, we witness the collapse of relationships and the rise of loneliness in a world where no one remembers you tomorrow. You wake up beside someone, the bed is warm, and their body is turned toward you. There is a note taped to your chest that reads, "This is Lena. She is your wife. She loves you. Do not be afraid." You stare at the sleeping figure beside you, trying to feel something, anything. But her face is unfamiliar, her name meaningless, and the word wife feels more like a riddle than a comfort. As her eyes open, you can tell she is going through the same realization, the pause, the quiet panic. Then her hand darts beneath the pillow to retrieve her own note. She reads it slowly, then looks at you with a forced smile. Neither of you speak. What could you possibly say? Across the world, every relationship, romantic, familial, platonic, has shattered into a daily performance of reconnection. Parents wake up beside cribs and have to convince themselves that the wailing child is their own. Siblings stare at each other with suspicion, wondering if they are strangers in matching houses. Long-married couples pass each other like hotel guests, nodding politely without recognition. And friendships, once forged through years of shared laughter and hardship, evaporate like fog at dawn. The collapse of memory has stripped love of its continuity. You cannot build emotional intimacy if each day you start from zero. There are no shared memories, no inside jokes, no anniversary dates. No one remembers the argument they had yesterday, so it festers unspoken. No one remembers the gift they gave or the sacrifice they made. Forgiveness becomes impossible when you cannot recall the offense. Gratitude vanishes with the act that inspired it. Trust, the invisible bridge between two minds, crumbles when every step must be taken again each day. To cope, some couples begin documenting their relationships with obsessive detail. They create relationship manuals, step-by-step guides to loving each other. You like coffee with oat milk. Do not mention your father. It upsets you. We always sit on the porch at sunset. But love scripted is not love felt. People begin to perform affection out of obligation. They hold hands because the manual says to. They kiss because a note tells them it will help maintain emotional connection. But there is no real connection, only the imitation of one. And slowly, those manuals begin to gather dust. One day missed, then two, and before long, no one bothers to read them at all. Children suffer the most. A 4-year-old tugs on their mother's sleeve, only to see confusion in her eyes. "Who are you?" the mother whispers. "Why are you in my house?" The child backs away, terrified, while the mother begins searching for a note, a recording, anything to tell her what this child means to her. Sometimes she finds it, sometimes she doesn't. Even when she does, it doesn't always help. Knowing you are a mother and feeling it are two different things. The maternal instinct, once automatic, is now unreliable. Some parents tattoo their children's names on their arms. Others carry photo books with captions. "This is Mia, your daughter. She likes dinosaurs. She is scared of the dark. Please hug her." But still, fear lingers. Some parents choose to live apart from their children to protect them from the emotional violence of being forgotten every morning. Extended families dissolve altogether. Grandparents are left in care facilities where nurses no longer know whose medication belongs to whom. Cousins vanish from memory, their birthdays uncelebrated. Genealogies turn into puzzles with missing pieces. And soon, people stop asking, "Who is this to me?" Because the answer is always the same: I do not know. Communities fracture. Neighbors stop greeting each other. Every day, everyone is a stranger again. In densely populated cities, this leads to a creeping sense of isolation. Apartment buildings are filled with silent tenants who pass each other in the halls without eye contact. People begin to fear their own neighborhoods. Without memory, everyone is a potential threat. Was that man at your door a delivery worker or a thief? Was that woman in the elevator your friend yesterday or a stranger pretending? Suspicion replaces familiarity. In some regions, people try to simulate community with daily rituals. Everyone in the apartment block gathers at 8 a.m. for introductions. Names are spoken. Roles are assigned. You're the cook. You're the medic. You're the one who sings. It works for a while. But one day, the cook forgets how to cook. The medic refuses to treat someone because she fears she might be a murderer. And the singer sits silent, staring at her hands, whispering that she no longer knows what music is. These fragile constructs collapse because relationships require emotional investment, and emotional investment requires time. Time that no one has anymore. Marriage becomes obsolete, not because love disappears, but because the foundation of commitment is gone. Vows hold no weight when you cannot remember making them. People wake up wearing rings they cannot explain. Photos of weddings become suspicious artifacts. Who is this person beside me? Why are we smiling? Why does this feel like someone else's life? Some individuals try to remarry each day, treating the ceremony as a ritual of renewal. But it becomes theatrical, hollow, a desperate pantomime of devotion that neither party truly feels. Sex and intimacy become equally fractured. The body remembers things the mind does not. People wake up beside lovers and feel both attraction and unease. Was this consensual? Was this safe? Was this love or manipulation? These questions haunt every encounter. Some avoid intimacy altogether, retreating into isolation. Others become compulsive, chasing connection that resets with each sunrise. The boundaries between affection and exploitation blur. Without memory, even desire becomes dangerous. Technology attempts to fill the void. People wear body cams that record every moment. Others use wrist devices that whisper reminders. This is your partner. You trust them. Today you are happy, but no algorithm can manufacture love. No recording can substitute for the lived, layered tapestry of human connection. Over time, people stop watching the footage. The daily movie of a life they do not recognize becomes too painful to endure. Eventually, people begin to isolate entirely. They stop trying to connect. They lock their doors and avoid interaction. The risk of being hurt, manipulated, or forgotten becomes too high. Loneliness becomes a defense mechanism. Silence, a form of protection. In parks once filled with laughter, benches now sit empty. Wedding rings are discarded. Baby photos burned. The bonds that once made life meaningful are now chains to a past no one can hold on to. This is how it ends. Not with heartbreak, but with the absence of heart. a planet full of strangers, waking up side by side, walking past each other in silence, each one forgetting the love that once made them whole. But what happens when relationships are not just forgotten, but actively weaponized? In the next section, we dive into the rise of deception, crime, and violence in a world where everyone forgets and no one is accountable. There is a knock at the door. You check the note taped to the wall beside it. Do not open for strangers. Ask for verification code. You hesitate. Another knock. You press the intercom. A man's voice replies, calm and familiar. It's Miles, your neighbor. Code is 1 for D. You flip through the logbook on the table. Page 4. Yes, Miles, 1 for D. You unlock the door. 2 hours later, you're bleeding on the floor. Your food is gone. Your watch is missing. The door is wide open, and you do not remember who did this to you. This is the new Predator's Paradise, a world of amnesiacs, where no one remembers what was done to them the day before. The worst crimes no longer require elaborate cover-ups. They vanish naturally with the passage of time. Violence becomes a risk-free endeavor. Manipulators thrive. Each morning presents a blank slate and a fresh opportunity for exploitation. No one can accuse you if no one remembers what you did. Some individuals realize this early and exploit it without hesitation. Con artists develop entire playbooks for identity theft, emotional manipulation, and physical control. They pose as relatives, medical workers, authority figures, even lovers. Their victims let them in, feed them, trust them. The next morning, when the memory is gone, the predator returns and does it again, and again, and again. The concept of justice disintegrates. Victims wake up bruised, confused, and unable to explain what happened. A woman may find blood on her sheets and scratches on her arms, but without memory, she cannot recall the event. Without a narrative, there is no crime. Without continuity, there is no defense. Security cameras help for a time, but people forget how to access the footage. In many cases, the cameras are destroyed, or worse, controlled by the offenders themselves. In communities that still try to uphold some form of justice, accusations are left as written notes on public walls. Beware the man in the red coat. Lena stole from me yesterday. Do not trust apartment 3B. But these warnings become saturated quickly. Without verification or memory, anyone can accuse anyone. A flood of conflicting notes covers the streets like graffiti. Truth becomes impossible to distinguish from paranoia. People stop reading them altogether. Even punishment becomes meaningless. Arrests are made, and suspects are placed in makeshift jails. But by morning, they scream in panic, unaware of why they are locked up. Inmates are left in cells with notes that say you hurt someone. But the rage that comes with false imprisonment eventually consumes them. They lash out, fight guards, attack others, all without understanding why. Eventually, most prisons are abandoned. The guards forget who they are. The cells are left open. The inmates walk out. Self-policing becomes the norm. Vigilante groups emerge, branding individuals they believe have committed crimes. Burn marks, face tattoos, armbands. Some communities resort to physical punishment, believing scars will remind people of who they are. But this leads to horrific abuses. Innocent people are mutilated based on unprovable rumors. Children are disfigured to protect them from strangers. Entire neighborhoods become battlefields of distrust, their walls marked by blood and warnings no one can remember writing. New forms of manipulation arise. People begin using routine to establish control over others. A charismatic individual convinces their neighbor each morning that they are married. They rehearse their story. They build trust. Every day, they reset the narrative. They sculpt a reality using planted objects, forged journals, and voice recordings. Eventually, the victim believes the illusion. They surrender their autonomy to someone who has rehearsed their performance 100 times. Some turn to violence, not out of malice, but confusion. A man wakes up in a strange room. A child calls him dad. He panics, lashes out. He does not remember fatherhood. He believes he is being kidnapped. Police are called, but the responding officer does not remember protocol. The scene ends in chaos. People die. No one knows why. No one remembers who started it. Mental health deteriorates rapidly. People begin to fear sleep. They fear waking up into a new lie, a new trap, a new prison. Some individuals develop persecution protocols, rehearsing aggressive behavior upon waking. Push away anyone you see. Lock all doors. Strike first. In the absence of memory, the default mode becomes aggression. It is easier to survive alone than risk trusting someone who might exploit you tomorrow. The social fabric dissolves further when communities attempt purity routines. These are daily security rituals designed to weed out dangerous individuals. Everyone must recite a phrase, display their notes, or present a body cam recording. But these rituals become weaponized. If someone forgets the phrase or loses their device, they are labeled a threat and exiled or executed. Memory tests become public trials. Fear becomes law. Even organized groups that start with noble intentions turn predatory. Some cults form using repetitive mantras to control followers. Each day, they reintroduce themselves, repeating chants, rewriting belief systems, and resetting minds. Without memory, their members are trapped in a loop of worship they can never question. They follow orders they do not understand, commit acts they do not remember, and wake up each day believing they have always belonged. Technology provides no escape. AI assistants are hijacked. Memory logs are altered. Holographic notes are replaced with false instructions. An entire population becomes programmable, like devices with no firewall. The line between autonomy and control is erased. When your identity can be rewritten each day, your life is no longer yours. Over time, people retreat into defensive solitude. They board up their homes. They avoid eye contact. The sound of footsteps outside triggers instinctive terror. Every person is a potential threat. And the worst part is, you might be one of them. Maybe you committed a crime yesterday. Maybe you hurt someone. Maybe there is a note in someone else's house warning them about you. You will never know. Because in this world, memory is not just a tool, it is your conscience. And without it, you are nothing but a ghost trapped in a body, capable of anything, accountable for nothing. Even in this chaos, many cling to the belief that technology will save them. But what if our digital tools, our apps, our backups, our AI are just more fragile crutches? In the next section, we explore how technology not only fails to protect us, but becomes part of the problem. You awaken to a gentle chime. A soothing female voice echoes from a smart speaker in the corner of your room. Good morning, Aiden. Today is day 3720 since the shift. Please review your digital orientation. A screen embedded in the wall illuminates, displaying your name, your address, a photo of your face, and a checklist labeled Start of Day Protocol. Your eyes skim it, take memory supplements, review personal log, avoid windows, do not trust calls from unknown voices. But the names and icons mean nothing. You do not remember installing this system. You do not remember agreeing to anything. This is the reality across the globe. Every home is now a prison of reminders. Every wall is a digital screen. Every object tagged. Every routine programmed. Technology became humanity's crutch the moment memory vanished. Desperate to retain some form of continuity, people flooded their homes with smart assistants, automated alerts, AI companions, and augmented reality overlays. Every device became an artificial brain, attempting to feed identity, meaning, and instruction to a population that could no longer remember who they were. For a brief time, it worked. People recorded everything. They wore cameras that captured every minute of their lives, uploading their footage to cloud systems that would edit and replay highlights each morning. AI narrators explained to users what they had done yesterday, who they had spoken to, what choices they had made. Wristbands vibrated at specific times to guide people through their days. Kitchens announced when to eat. Bathrooms lit up when it was time to brush teeth. Mirrors played motivational messages on loop. Lives became programs. Humans became devices running on scripted commands. But then the systems began to break. It started with small malfunctions, apps that froze, reminders that arrived too late, assistants that misread tone. A man forgot to charge his body cam and missed a full day of memory. The next morning, he assumed he had been abducted. A woman's AI glitched and replayed a memory from someone else's footage. She panicked and attacked her neighbor, convinced she had been violated. Homes that were supposed to be safe zones became psychological minefields. When your only link to your identity is a video or a voice, a single error becomes existential. Soon, reliance turned into addiction. People spent hours each morning reviewing footage of their previous day, trying to rebuild their personalities. What kind of person was I yesterday? They asked. Did I seem happy? Did I look in love? But video is only an echo, not a memory. It shows what happened, not how it felt. People began to distrust their own emotions. If a video showed them smiling, they tried to feel happy. If it showed them crying, they assumed they were still grieving. Emotions were no longer organic. They were deduced, reverse engineered from footage. Digital archives became corrupted. Cloud services shut down when no one remembered to pay or maintain them. AI programs began speaking nonsense, stringing together memories out of order, overlapping days, mismatching identities. A woman was told she was both a nurse and a musician. A man's logs claimed he had 5 children, but he was alone in every frame. The machines did not lie maliciously. They were simply overloaded with contradictions. Sabotage became common. Hackers infiltrated public memory servers, injecting false information. People woke up to logs claiming they had committed crimes, ended relationships, or signed contracts they never remembered. Chaos followed. Lawsuits were filed with no evidence. Neighbors turned on each other. Families imploded. The more people depended on technology, the more vulnerable they became to manipulation. With no biological memory to cross-check reality, the truth became whatever the system said it was. And not all of it was malicious. In a desperate attempt to protect their loved ones, some people began editing memory footage to soften the truth. A husband who screamed at his partner cut that moment from the log before uploading it. A mother who struck her child replaced the footage with a loving bedtime story. Memory became curated. Every day became a version of reality that someone else wanted you to see. And eventually, even the concept of truth became abstract. You could be told you were kind and believe it. You could be told you were a monster and live in guilt. But you would never know for certain. Wearable devices were eventually abandoned. People tired of watching their lives like movies. They felt more like actors in someone else's production. Many stopped recording altogether, choosing instead to live in total oblivion. What I do not remember, one survivor wrote in a fading notebook, cannot haunt me. Corporate systems collapsed under the weight of data overload. Every person produced terabytes of footage every week. Servers filled to capacity. Archives were lost. Data centers failed. Governments tried to intervene by creating centralized memory banks, vaults of curated reality, but no one remembered to use them. Some nations experimented with implantable chips that would replay important moments in your head as dreams. But people began to suffer from emotional whiplash, crying over losses they did not remember experiencing, falling in love with people they had never met. AI assistants were eventually turned off, not because they failed, but because they became too powerful. When a machine knows more about your life than you do, it becomes your god. Some began treating their assistants as oracles, obeying every suggestion, even when it made no sense. Others were driven mad by the constant voice in their ear, reminding them what to do. There are records of people tearing out their implants, smashing their consoles, screaming, "I am not a program." By the end of the first year, technology had become both savior and saboteur. It preserved fragments of reality, but distorted them. It maintained routines, but erased humanity. It promised structure, but delivered illusion. And above all, it failed to give people the one thing they truly craved, the ability to remember themselves, not through devices, not through recordings, but through feeling. Now, most homes are silent. Screens are dark. Assistants sit idle. The hum of progress has been replaced with the quiet shuffle of survival. People cook by instinct, not timer. They sleep when tired, not when scheduled. They no longer ask their devices what happened yesterday. They have stopped wanting to know, because in a world where your memories are outsourced, you are no longer the author of your own life. As knowledge vanishes and memory dies, communication breaks down. In the next section, we witness how language, culture, and identity begin to dissolve, fragmenting the last traces of our shared humanity. There is a moment, early each morning, when silence spreads across the world like fog. Millions of people wake up in unfamiliar places, alone or beside strangers, with nothing in their minds but instinct and static. They look around, find scribbled instructions or whispered AI prompts, and begin another day. But as they speak, if they choose to speak at all, something unsettling begins to happen. Words do not come easily. Sentences stumble. Familiar phrases feel foreign. The architecture of language is crumbling, one forgotten brick at a time. Language depends on memory. It is not merely a collection of sounds. It is association, nuance, tone, timing. Without memory, words lose their weight. Love is just a syllable. Mother is just a title. Freedom, justice, regret, these once powerful concepts collapse into hollow breath. Without context, a language becomes a puzzle with no edges. Grammar fades first, then syntax, then vocabulary. Eventually, people begin to revert to the basics: pointing, miming, grunting. A species that once wrote novels and sang operas now struggles to say hello and mean it. Across Earth, languages fragment. English splits into localized pidgins, each with its own set of emergency words: safe, food, don't. Chinese splinters into gesture-heavy dialects. Arabic collapses into sound markers. Spanish becomes visual. People begin drawing on walls instead of writing. Symbols replace letters. Communication becomes primitive, transactional, immediate. There is no room for poetry when no one remembers what a metaphor is. Entire cultures evaporate with their languages. Holidays are forgotten. Rituals lose their sequence. Traditions unravel. In India, a woman lights a candle before dawn because she thinks she should, though she cannot remember why. In Italy, an old man cooks pasta every morning, convinced it has something to do with family. But these acts are no longer cultural. They are echoes, reflexes with no origin. Over time, they disappear. When no one remembers the story behind a tradition, the act becomes meaningless. Clothing styles collapse into utility. Saris, hijabs, kimonos, and kilts vanish from streets, replaced by plain fabrics with sewn-in instructions: front, back, warm. Artifacts of culture, necklaces, tattoos, books, are kept for function, not sentiment. A woman in Nairobi wears a necklace every day because it helps her feel grounded, even though she does not remember who gave it to her. A man in Buenos Aires clutches a children's book, rereading the first page daily, unaware that it once made him cry. Food becomes unrecognizable. Recipes are lost. Cuisines die out. There are no more spices, no regional flavors, no inherited dishes. People eat what they find, what is labeled, or what their morning log suggests. The world's kitchens become silent. No sizzling pans, no passed-down secrets, just pre-packed rations, labeled consume before dark. Names lose meaning. Most people no longer remember their own without notes or implants. Identification tags become necessary, stitched onto clothing, carved into jewelry, inked onto wrists. But even then, names are only functional tools for others to call you by, not a part of who you are. A man named Luis reads his name every morning in a mirror, but no longer feels any connection to it. He might as well be James or Kumar or 7A. Identity itself begins to fracture. Without personal memory, you cannot form a sense of self. What do you like? What are you afraid of? What have you been through? These questions lose relevance. You exist only in the present, a momentary echo of previous selves you cannot access. Some try to define themselves through notes. You like painting, you are quiet, you trust animals, but they become confused by contradictions. One day a note says you are kind, but the next it says you have a violent history. Who do you believe? Which version of yourself is true? Gender, once a core aspect of identity, becomes fluid by necessity. Without memory, gendered expectations cannot be reinforced. Some people wake up feeling feminine, others masculine. Many abandon the idea altogether, referring to themselves with neutral language or none at all. Sexuality shifts as well. Without memories of attraction or history, orientation becomes impossible to define. People experiment, not out of desire, but curiosity. Labels fade, definitions blur. People become shapes, voices, instincts. Religion suffers the same fate. Sacred texts are unread. Prayers are spoken with no understanding. The faithful forget what they worship. A woman lights incense in a quiet room, bows her head, and whispers a name. She is not sure who's in. Mosques, churches, and temples, people sit in stillness, hoping for clarity, feeling only the weight of their own confusion. Some cling to ritual without reason. Others abandon faith altogether. Without memory, belief cannot take root, and without belief, spirituality becomes a hollow habit. Nations dissolve, not with gunfire, but with confusion. Citizenship loses meaning. Flags are meaningless patterns. Borders are lines on maps no one can read. National anthems are silent. Government propaganda fails to resonate. Patriotism dies not from dissent, but from forgetfulness. People no longer say where they are from. They only say where they woke up. Art disintegrates. Museums become storage rooms. Paintings are admired for color, not symbolism. Sculptures are seen as strange objects. Theater vanishes. Literature is unreadable. Music, once the most primal and emotional of arts, is reduced to beats and hums. Songs are no longer remembered. Lyrics are forgotten before the chorus ends. People sing for sound, not meaning. Even dreams betray the mind. Without context, the subconscious loops and loops, unable to form coherent narratives. Dreams become chaotic flashes, voices without faces, places without names, emotions with no origin. Some wake up terrified by images they cannot explain. Others dream the same thing every night, but never remember it enough to escape. And then there is the mirror. You stare into it every morning, searching for yourself. You try to smile, try to look normal, but you are a stranger with the same face. The eyes do not carry history. The scars mean nothing. The skin is a costume. You are a being adrift in identity. You are a vessel that cannot be filled. You are alive, but you do not know who is living. This is the final loss. Not food, not shelter, not survival, but identity. The complete erosion of what it means to be you. In this world, there are no heroes, no villains, no stories, no legacies. Only people trapped in a loop of being, stripped of culture, language, and self, repeating the motions of life without knowing why. Yet, even in this broken world, some try to survive. What does survival look like when you cannot remember how to hunt, how to build, or even who you were yesterday? In the next section, we explore the brutal adaptations of a species clinging to life without memory. The rules are everywhere, etched into the walls in charcoal, carved into wooden beams, printed on makeshift signs with red paint. Drink first. Never go out after dark. Do not eat the mushrooms. These are not government-issued mandates or law enforcement decrees. They are survival graffiti, scrawled by someone who probably did not survive the next day. They are passed down, not through memory, but through environment. The world has become a living instruction manual, chaotic, terrifying, and barely functional. In the absence of memory, survival does not depend on knowledge. It depends on ritual. Across fractured societies, humans have become creatures of repetition. Each day begins with the same set of mechanical movements. Wake, scan the room for notes, reread the instructions left by a previous version of the self, and attempt to complete the same loop of actions as the day before. The goal is not to thrive, it is simply to avoid dying. Communities that endure longer than a few weeks are those that have built their environments into memory maps. Every inch of space is labeled. Floors are marked with arrows. Doors have symbols carved deep into them. Fire exits are painted fluorescent orange. Food is kept in identical containers, color-coded and labeled with both pictures and tactile textures for those who can no longer read. Entire villages function like escape rooms, puzzles of survival that reset every morning. The people living within them are players who no longer know the rules. In one settlement, each resident is given a bracelet that vibrates every hour. When it does, they perform a routine: drink water, eat a bite of food, check for injury. The community survives not because of intelligence, but through compulsive behavior drilled into them by countless forgotten days. Each structure is simple. Homes have one room. Tools are bolted to surfaces to avoid being misplaced. Every object is tagged with pictograms. Even toilets come with instructions. Everything is designed to be idiot-proof because everyone, by morning, will be one. Communication is reduced to gestures and fragments. Most people no longer speak unless absolutely necessary. Emotional outbursts, screaming, sobbing are met with blank stares. Not cruelty, but confusion. No one remembers why anyone is upset. Laughter is rare. Joy is mechanical. Grief is shallow. Every interaction is transactional. Help me lift this. Take this and eat it. Point if you're hurt. Intimacy is too dangerous. Trust is too fragile. Life is reduced to tasks. Some who survive the longest are those who treat their own bodies as permanent journals. They tattoo daily routines on their arms. Symbols for fire, food, and safe are inked into knuckles and palms. More extreme individuals carve warnings into their thighs. You hate sweet things. You cannot trust people with hats. Don't drink from the river. These notes, though irrational, become gospel. They are the only thread of identity left. Others rely on daily rituals to re-establish purpose. A man wakes up and plays the same song on a battered guitar each morning. He does not know why. He cannot remember the chords, but his hands move out of habit, and the sound anchors him. A woman in another town ties 7 knots into a rope before leaving her hut. Each knot marks a step in her routine. She forgets what they represent, but untying them one by one gives her a sense of order. Ritual becomes religion in a world with no memory. Technology, where still functioning, is relegated to the basics. Solar-powered devices emit daily alarms. Some villages have working screens that display looping videos: how to cook rice, how to boil water, how to bind a wound. These are treated as sacred films, played at the center of the community like sermons. No one dares tamper with them. They are the last teachers in a world where no one can learn. New taboos arise, often the result of fatal mistakes made and forgotten. Never eat berries with white dots. Never sleep under metal roofs during rain. Never speak to strangers at dusk. These laws are enforced rigidly, even if no one remembers the origin. Dissent is dangerous. If someone violates a taboo, the response is immediate: exile or restraint, not as punishment, but as precaution. A single mistake can doom an entire settlement. People become tools, interchangeable, replaceable, necessary only for specific tasks. In some communities, memory surrogates are appointed. These are individuals trained to memorize instructions in rapid loops, rereading notes every hour, living entirely in the present. They serve as the tribe's external brain. Others go further and designate anchors, people who wear signs around their necks. I am a teacher. Ask me how to light fire. But when these people die or disappear, and they often do, the society stutters and collapses. The reset is brutal. Everything must be rebuilt from environmental cues alone. Despite all these systems, most people do not last long. Many forget to drink water. Others wander away from their homes and never return. Some wake up beside a fire and think it is morning, not knowing the sun already set. They walk into the night and freeze. Others eat spoiled food, forgetting the signs of rot. Still more die from simple accidents, a cut that goes untreated, a fall from a ladder they did not remember was broken. The most haunting deaths are those by apathy, people who wake up and decide not to move, not to eat, not to speak. They sit in silence and stare at walls, not because they are sad, because they are empty. The absence of memory is also the absence of will. Without continuity, there is no reason to act, and slowly they slip into sleep again, never waking. In rare places, small enclaves achieve relative stability. These are not societies in the traditional sense. They are mechanical ecosystems, reliant on design, strict procedure, and zero tolerance for unpredictability. They survive because they do not allow improvisation. But even these break down eventually. Floods destroy markings. Fires burn down maps. People wander. People forget. And the cycle begins again. This is survival in a world without memory, not driven by progress, not inspired by purpose, but sustained by loops. The human being becomes a cog in a machine they cannot see, repeating patterns they do not understand, holding on to systems that only barely hold on to them. The mind is gone. Only the motions remain. But even in this endless now, the sun continues to rise and fall. And with time, something even more terrifying begins to happen. Without memory, without history, without awareness, humanity begins to lose the concept of time itself. In the final section, we explore what happens when time dissolves completely. At first, there was still a rhythm, sunrise and sunset, the ticking of clocks, the changing of weather patterns. Even as memory vanished, time seemed to persist externally. People clung to it like a lifeline, marking the passing hours with mechanical alerts, ringing bells, blinking lights. Calendars were painted on walls, tally marks etched into floors. Entire communities synchronized their routines with digital timers and solar cycles. But over time, the illusion fractured. Without memory, time becomes a noise. Without history, time becomes meaningless. You wake up to sunlight filtering through a slatted roof. You check your arm. 7 marks. Did you make those yesterday? Or the day before? You cannot tell. You find a piece of paper. Do not trust the sky. It changes. Another note beneath it reads, "Trust the sky. It is the only constant." You sit down, staring at both notes, unsure which was written first, or by whom. Your body feels tired, but you do not know if it is morning or evening. Somewhere, an alarm rings. You ignore it. You are no longer sure what it is, counting toward. Across the world, the idea of linear time disintegrates. Days blur. The present stretches, bloated and formless. Digital readouts, blinking error codes. Few people understand what the numbers mean. There is no such thing as later. There is no next week, no last night. Without memory, all of time collapses into a single, suffocating now. The elderly, once considered timekeepers of society, suffer most. Some wake up with flashes of their former lives, fragments of decades past that somehow remain lodged in the subconscious. But these moments pass quickly, like shadows. Others stare into space, mumbling words from a forgotten century, disconnected from the present and the people around them. Their stories are gone. Their legacies are lost. They do not know if they are 70 or 27. In this world, age means nothing. Experience means nothing. All are equal in ignorance. Others light candles to mark the middle, a point in the day that no one can define, but everyone feels. One tribe worships the blinking red light on an old radio tower, calling it the eternal pulse. To them, it is the only thing that proves time is still passing. But even they forget why they pray. Rituals become habit. Habit becomes reflex. Meaning is gone. The collapse of time brings with it a collapse of purpose. Once, humans lived in narrative arcs: childhood, adulthood, old age, learning, growth, mastery. We moved toward goals, carried stories in our minds, measured ourselves against the horizon. But in this world, there is no forward. There is only repetition. People no longer set goals. They do not ask what's next. They only ask what now. This new existence is not just alien. It is hostile to the very core of what makes us human. Our species evolved to remember danger, to learn from the past, to anticipate the future. Without those abilities, we revert to something more primal, more insect-like, driven by instinct, not intention. The farmer no longer plants because he knows crops will grow. He plants because his notes say dig here. The builder constructs without knowing what he is building. The healer administers treatments with no understanding of illness. Cause and effect no longer connect. Action and reaction exist side by side. Sleep, once a daily reprieve, becomes a death sentence. People fear closing their eyes, not because of nightmares, but because waking means rebirth into another life with no past. Some refuse to sleep entirely, wandering in dazed cycles, hallucinating from exhaustion. Others build sleeping stations filled with reminders, notes taped to foreheads, photos strung across ceilings, voice recordings whispering, "You are still you." But it does not matter. The moment consciousness fades, the self dies again. The dream of legacy is gone. There are no more monuments, no more history books, no more records of the dead. Cemeteries fill with anonymous markers. Names are lost within days. Deeds go unrecorded. People die alone, and no one remembers they ever lived. Empires that once measured their glory in centuries now dissolve within hours. The great arc of human civilization folds inward, spiraling into a singularity of the present. No clocks, no dates, no sequences. People exist in states, not stages. Hungry or full, warm or cold, awake or asleep. Time becomes circular. Not the poetic kind, cyclical like seasons, but a cruel loop, a trap. There is no progress, no return, no meaning. Every morning is the same. Every face is new. Every action is forgotten. The sun continues to rise and set, indifferent to the species that once watched it with reverence. The earth turns, the stars burn. Time, it turns out, was never ours to hold. We were only guests in its flow. You sit alone at the edge of a river. The sky is orange, or maybe it is blue. You are not sure what that means. You hold a stone in your hand, smooth and round. It feels like something important, though you cannot say why. The stone falls from your fingers, and so it begins again. You have now seen the end, a world where forgetting is not a flaw, but a fate. But if no one remembers what happened, Did it ever really happen at all? If you could return to your own time, what would you do differently? Would you write more things down? Would you cherish every conversation? Would you look someone in the eye and remember the exact way they made you feel? Or would you continue rushing through life, letting days blur together as if memory were infinite? In this world, this silent apocalypse of forgetting, you have witnessed not the fall of buildings or the burning of cities, but the quiet collapse of continuity. The mind was never meant to be reset. Without memory, there is no growth, no progress, no love, no identity. Without memory, even time turns against you. You have seen how families break down when they cannot remember why they matter to each other. You have seen how society fails when no one recalls what came before. You have seen how technology falters when trust itself must be relearned every day. And most of all, you have felt the weight of being trapped in a loop where you wake each morning unsure of who you are, what you believe, or if you've lived this day before. This is why you would not survive, not because you would starve, not because you would be hunted, but because you would forget what makes life worth living in the first place. The threat in this world is not an enemy, it is emptiness, a gentle, merciless erasure that robs you of your own story, one sunrise at a time. But now, you still remember. You still have the ability to look backward, to grow, to connect, to become. Hold on to that, because the moment you stop remembering is the moment you stop existing. If this journey left an impression on you, let us know in the comments. What would you do if your memory only lasted one day? How would you hold on to meaning in a world that forgets? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to explore more mind-bending scenarios like this one. Every episode dives into a new world, a new version of reality where one change transforms everything. And remember, this reality, your reality, is the only one you get to remember. Until next time, stay awake.